I should have trusted my instincts when the Hendersons called me that Friday evening. There was something desperate in Mrs. Henderson's voice, something that made my skin crawl even through the phone. But I was 17 and needed the money for prom dress, so I ignored the warning bells in my head. "It's just for tonight, Emma," she said. "We'll be back by midnight. Lily is such a good girl. She'll probably be asleep the whole time." The Hendersons lived in the expensive part of town, in one of those modern houses that looked more like an art gallery than a home. I'd babysat for other families in the neighborhood before, but never for them. When I arrived at 7 p.m., something felt immediately wrong. The house was too quiet. Not the peaceful quiet of a sleeping child, but the oppressive silence of a place where something terrible had happened. Mrs. Henderson met me at the door, and I was shocked by her appearance. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Dark circles under her eyes, pale skin, hands that trembled as she handed me her emergency contact information. "Lily is upstairs in her room," she said, avoiding eye contact. "She's been going through a difficult phase. Don't go in unless you absolutely have to. She doesn't like strangers." Mr. Henderson appeared behind her, looking equally haggard. He kept glancing up the stairs like he was afraid of what might come down them. "The rules are simple," he said. "Don't go upstairs unless Lily calls for you. Keep the curtains closed, and whatever you do, don't look in the basement. We're having some work done down there." They left in such a hurry that Mrs. Henderson forgot her purse, but when I called out to them, they were already backing out of the driveway like the house was on fire. For the first hour, everything was normal. I did my homework at the kitchen table, occasionally glancing up at the ceiling when I heard soft footsteps from Lily's room. The footsteps were rhythmic, almost like pacing, but I figured she was just restless. Around 9 p.m., the pacing stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. I tried to distract myself by watching TV, but every channel seemed to be showing the same thing. News reports about missing children in the area. 3 kids had vanished in the past month, all from families in this neighborhood. The police suspected a serial kidnapper was targeting affluent families. That's when I heard Lily's voice for the first time. "Emma," she called from upstairs. Her voice sounded strange, too mature for a 7-year-old, with an odd echo like she was speaking from the bottom of a well. "Yes, sweetie," I called back. "Can you come up here? I'm scared." I remembered Mrs. Henderson's instructions about not going upstairs unless absolutely necessary, but the child sounded genuinely frightened. I climbed the stairs slowly, noting how cold it got with each step. The upstairs hallway was darker than it should have been, even with the lights on. Lily's door was slightly ajar, and I could see a thin sliver of her room through the crack. What I saw made me freeze. The room was empty. No bed, no toys, no furniture at all. Just bare walls and a single chair in the center of the room. On the chair sat a little girl with long dark hair covering her face. She was wearing a white nightgown that looked old and dirty. "Lily," I whispered. The girl's head snapped up, and I saw her face. It wasn't the face of a child. The features were too sharp, too knowing. Her eyes were completely black, and when she smiled, I saw that her teeth had been filed to points. "I'm not Lily," she said in that same echoing voice. "Lily is in the basement. Would you like to see her?" I ran down those stairs faster than I'd ever moved in my life, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. But when I reached the bottom, I found all the doors locked. The front door, the back door, even the windows, everything was sealed tight. I was trapped in the house with whatever that thing upstairs was. My phone had no signal, and the landline was dead. I searched frantically for another way out, but every exit was blocked. That's when I noticed the basement door was standing open, creaking slightly on its hinges. The Hendersons had specifically told me not to go down there, but I could hear something now, a faint whimpering, like a child crying. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and slowly descended into the basement. The smell hit me first, a sweet, sickly odor that made my stomach turn. The basement was finished, but cold, with concrete walls and a low ceiling. In the far corner, I saw her. The real Lily was tied to a chair, her mouth taped shut, her eyes wide with terror. She was thin, so thin that her clothes hung off her like rags. She'd been down here for weeks, maybe months, but she wasn't alone. There were 3 other children tied up in the darkness, the missing kids from the news reports. They were all alive, but barely. Their eyes were sunken, their skin pale and waxy. They looked at me with desperate hope, making muffled sounds through their gags. I started untying Lily first, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the knots. That's when I heard footsteps on the basement stairs, but they weren't human footsteps. They were too light, too quick, and they seemed to be coming from multiple directions at once. "You shouldn't have come down here, Emma," said that terrible voice from upstairs, but now it was coming from behind me. I turned around to see the thing that had been pretending to be Lily. Up close, it was even more horrifying. Its limbs were too long, bending at impossible angles. Its skin was grey and mottled, like something that had been underwater for too long. But worst of all were its eyes, endless black voids that seemed to pull at my sanity. "The Hendersons brought you here for me," it said, tilting its head at an unnatural angle. "They've been feeding me babysitters for months. You're the 4th one." I realized then that the Hendersons weren't victims, they were accomplices. They'd made some kind of deal with this thing, trading innocent lives to keep it satisfied. The creature took a step closer, and I could see other shapes moving in the shadows behind it. More things like it, all wearing the faces of children, but moving with predatory grace. "Don't worry," it whispered. "We'll keep you alive for a while. It's more fun that way." I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed the gasoline can I'd seen in the corner, probably used for the lawnmower, and doused the creature with it. It shrieked and stumbled backward, its fake child face melting and shifting into something even more monstrous. I threw the flashlight at the wall, and the bulb exploded in a shower of sparks. The gasoline ignited immediately, and the basement filled with orange light and the smell of burning flesh. The creature's screams were inhuman, a sound like metal being torn apart. The other shadows in the basement began fleeing, scurrying up the walls and through cracks in the foundation like insects. I quickly untied the children, and we ran up the stairs together. The front door was unlocked now, and we burst out into the cool night air just as the basement exploded in flames. The police found us on the lawn 20 minutes later, called by neighbors who saw the fire. The children were taken to the hospital, and I spent hours giving statements to detectives who looked at me like I was insane. The official report said it was a kidnapping ring run by the Hendersons, who died in the fire trying to destroy evidence. There was no mention of the creatures in the basement, no explanation for the impossible things I'd seen. But I know the truth. And sometimes, late at night, I still get calls from numbers I don't recognize. When I answer, I hear children's voices asking if I'd like to babysit. I always hang up immediately, but I can't shake the feeling that someday, One of those calls won't take no for an answer. Asterisk. When my grandmother died, I inherited her Victorian house, along with everything inside it. The place had been in our family for over a century, and every room was stuffed with antiques, old photographs, and memories I didn't recognize. Most of it was junk, but the real estate agents said the house would sell better if it looked lived in, so I decided to spend a few weeks sorting through everything. The portrait was hanging in the upstairs hallway, and I almost missed it completely. It was a large oil painting of a family, a stern-looking father, a pale mother, and 3 children arranged formally in Victorian-era clothing. The frame was ornate and heavy, probably worth more than the painting itself. What struck me immediately was how much the father resembled my own dad, and one of the children looked remarkably like my sister when she was young. I found a note, tucked behind the frame, written in my grandmother's shaky handwriting. The Blackwood family, 1897. Never take this down. They don't like to be moved. I laughed at the superstitious warning. Grandma had always been eccentric, filling the house with dream catchers and sage bundles. But the painting was beautiful, and I decided to keep it up while I worked on clearing out the house. That first night, I woke up to the sound of children whispering. It was faint at first, like voices carrying through the walls. I assumed it was the neighbors, until I realized the houses on either side had been empty for months. I got up to investigate, walking through the dark hallway past the portrait. In the dim moonlight, I could swear the painted eyes followed me, but I dismissed it as a trick of the shadows. The whispering stopped the moment I reached the top of the stairs. The next few days were productive. I managed to clear out 3 rooms, donating boxes of clothes and dishes to charity. But every night, the whispering returned. Always children's voices, always coming from somewhere near the portrait. I started sleeping with earplugs, but somehow I could still hear them underneath the phone, like they were speaking directly into my brain. On the 4th night, I decided to confront whatever was causing the noise. I set up a camera, pointed at the hallway, and waited in the guest bedroom with the door cracked open. Around 2 a.m., the whispering started again. This time, I could make out words. He's not supposed to be here. Make him leave. We were here first. I crept into the hallway, but the voices stopped immediately. The portrait looked normal in the darkness, just painted figures on canvas. But when I checked the camera footage the next morning, my blood turned to ice. The children in the painting had moved. Slightly, subtly, but they had definitely changed positions. The youngest girl, who had been looking straight ahead, was now staring directly at the camera. The boy's hand, which had been resting on his father's shoulder, was now pointing toward the guest bedroom where I'd been sleeping. I told myself it was a trick of the lighting, or maybe the old house was settling and the portrait had shifted in its frame. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong with that painting. That night, I decided to test my grandmother's warning. I carefully took the portrait down from the wall and moved it to the basement, covering it with an old sheet. If it was just my imagination, this would end the disturbances. The silence that followed was worse than the whispering. The house felt wrong without the portrait in its place. The air grew thick and oppressive, like breathing through wet wool. I kept hearing footsteps on the stairs, doors creaking open and slamming shut. Every shadow seemed to move independently, and I constantly felt like I was being watched. On the second night without the portrait upstairs, things escalated. I woke up to find wet footprints leading from the basement door to my bedroom. Small footprints, like those of children. They were dark and sticky, and when I touched one, my finger came away stained with something that looked like old blood. The footprints led directly to my bed, then disappeared. I grabbed a flashlight and went down to the basement, dreading what I might find. The sheet I'd used to cover the portrait was on the floor, and the painting was facing the wall. When I turned it around, I nearly dropped the flashlight. The family in the portrait had changed completely. The parents looked angry now, their faces twisted with rage. But it was the children that made me stumble backward. They were no longer standing politely beside their parents. Instead, they were climbing out of the frame itself, their painted hands reaching toward the viewer, their mouths open in silent screams. And their eyes were no longer painted. They were real, wet, human eyes that blinked and tracked my movement across the basement. I ran upstairs and called my sister, but she didn't believe me. She said I was stressed from dealing with Grandma's death and the house. But when I sent her the photos I'd taken, she went quiet for a long time. "Put it back," she finally whispered. "Put it back where it belongs and leave that house immediately." I hung the portrait back in its original spot with shaking hands. The moment it was in place, the oppressive feeling lifted. The house felt normal again. But that night, as I packed my bags to leave forever, I heard something new. Adult voices whispering from the portrait. "Good boy," said a woman's voice. "You learned the rules. We'll be watching you," added a man. "Even after you leave." I left the house that morning and never returned. The real estate agent sold it, as is furniture and all. I told her the portrait was included with the sale, that it was a family heirloom that belonged with the house. 3 months later, I got a call from the new owners. They wanted to know about the portrait in the upstairs hallway. Apparently, their children had been having nightmares about the painted family coming to life. I told them the same thing my grandmother had written: "Never take it down. They don't like to be moved." But I didn't tell them the rest of what I'd learned. I didn't mention that sometimes, late at night, I still feel those painted eyes watching me from across town. Or that I've started seeing people who look exactly like the family in the portrait walking around my neighborhood. They're getting closer every day. And I'm starting to think that hanging the portrait back up wasn't enough. I think they want something more. I think they want me to come home. I can't remember my mother's face. This should terrify me more than it does. But that's the insidious thing about losing memories. You don't always know what's gone until you reach for it and find empty space. I discovered this particular absence last Tuesday when I was going through old photo albums, looking for pictures to display at her memorial service. I found hundreds of photos of family gatherings, vacations, birthday parties. In every single one, there was a person-shaped blur, where my mother should have been. Not a blurred face or emotion smudge, but a complete void, like someone had carefully erased her from existence while leaving everything else intact. The doctors say it's early onset Alzheimer's, but I'm only 34. They run test after test, showing me brain scans that look normal, prescribing medications that don't help. None of them believe me when I try to explain that my memories aren't just fading. They're being systematically removed. It started 6 months ago with small things. I'd walk into a room and forget why I came there. I'd lose track of conversations mid-sentence. Normal stuff that everyone experiences. But then it escalated. I forgot my first pet's name. Then I forgot I'd ever had a pet at all. I forgot my college, graduation, my first job, my wedding day. Each missing memory left behind only a vague sense of loss, like grief for something I couldn't quite identify. My wife Sarah tried to help by showing me videos on her phone, reading from my journal, surrounding me with familiar objects. But even as she spoke, I could feel the memories dissolving like sugar in water. By the time she finished describing our honeymoon in Paris, I'd forgotten we'd ever been married. That's when I started leaving myself notes. I wrote everything down obsessively. What I ate for breakfast, people I met, conversations I had. I filled dozens of notebooks with the mundane details of my life, hoping to create a paper trail that whatever was stealing my memories couldn't touch. But when I went back to read the earliest entries, the pages were blank. Not erased, not torn out, just completely white, as if I'd never written anything at all. The first time I saw it, I thought I was hallucinating. I was in my study around midnight, desperately writing down everything I could remember about my childhood, when I noticed a shadow moving across the wall. It was roughly human-shaped, but wrong somehow. Too tall, too thin, with fingers that stretched like tendrils. The shadow detached itself from the wall and moved toward my desk. As it got closer, I could see it more clearly. It wasn't exactly a person, but it wasn't entirely inhuman either. Its face was smooth and featureless, except for a mouth that was far too wide, filled with teeth like broken glass. "You're writing too fast," it said in a voice like static electricity. "I can barely keep up." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The thing reached toward my notebook with those impossible fingers, and everywhere it touched, the ink vanished. My carefully documented memories disappeared word by word, sentence by sentence. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper. It tilted its head, and I saw that where its eyes should have been, there were only deep holes that seemed to go on forever. "I'm what you called me," it said. "The memory thief, though I prefer to think of myself as a curator. I collect the experiences that people no longer need." "I need them," I protested. "Those are my memories, are they?" it asked, and suddenly, I couldn't remember what we were talking about. I blinked, and it was gone. I was sitting at my desk with a blank notebook in front of me. No idea why I was there or what I'd been doing. But somewhere deep in my mind, I knew something important had been taken from me. Over the next few weeks, I started setting traps. I hid cameras around the house, hoping to catch evidence of whatever was stealing my memories. But every morning, the memory cards were empty. I tried staying awake all night, but I'd always wake up at my desk with hours missing and more blank pages in my notebook. The thing is, it wasn't just my memories anymore. It was everyone's memories of me, Sarah started, looking at me like I was a stranger. She'd answer when I spoke to her, but there was no recognition in her eyes, no warmth. When I asked her about our life together, she'd give me polite but confused responses, like I was asking about someone she'd never met. My co-workers began treating me the same way. Friends stopped calling. Even my own reflection in the mirror seemed less familiar each day, as if I was slowly being erased from existence itself. That's when I realized the true horror of my situation. The memory thief wasn't just stealing my past, it was stealing my entire identity. Every experience that had made me who I was, every connection I'd formed with another person, every proof that I had ever existed. I was disappearing. I started writing letters to myself, hiding them in places the creature couldn't find. I carved my name into trees, painted messages on walls, anything to leave a permanent mark that couldn't be erased. But even as I worked, I could feel the memories of creating these messages slipping away. Last night, I finally saw it clearly. The memory thief was sitting in my living room when I came home from work, rifling through a photo album like it was reading a book. It looked up when I entered, and for the first time, I could see its face properly. It was my face. Or rather, it was what my face would look like if you removed everything human about it. The warmth, the personality, the accumulated experience of 34 years of living. It was like looking at a blank template of myself. "You're almost ready," it said in my own voice. "Just a few more memories, and the transition will be complete." "What transition?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "I've been wearing your memories, learning to be you," it explained. "Soon, I'll take your place completely, and no one will know the difference. You'll simply ... stop existing." I understood then that this wasn't random. The memory thief had chosen me specifically, had been slowly consuming my life piece by piece until it could step into my shoes and take over my existence. Maybe it had done this before, to other people who had simply vanished from the world without a trace. "Why me?" I whispered. It smiled with my face, and the expression was perfectly familiar, yet completely alien at the same time. "Because you have such interesting memories," it said, "and because no one will miss you when you're gone." As it spoke, I felt the last of my childhood memories dissolving. My first day of school, my mother reading me bedtime stories, the taste of birthday cake, all of it slipping away, like water through my fingers. I'm writing this now because it's the only thing I have left. My name is ... I can't remember my name. I live at ... The address is gone too. I think I had a wife, but I can't picture her face. The thing wearing my appearance is getting stronger while I grow weaker. Soon, it will have everything that was mine. And I'll have nothing left but this final memory, the knowledge that something has taken my place in the world. If you're reading this, if you somehow find this note, please remember that I existed. I don't know who I was anymore, but I was someone. I had a life, had people who loved me, had dreams and fears and hopes. I was real. The memory thief is standing behind me now. I can feel it reading over my shoulder, and I know that as soon as I stop writing, this last memory will be gone too. It's reaching for the pen in my hand. It's wearing my wedding ring. I can't remember getting married, but the ring proves it happened. I had a life. I was someone important to somebody. My name was